I am taking Pete Upton's place today. He is out, had a toothache or two, and won't be able to make this meeting. But Julie and myself will be co-host here, and I'm excited about this version for this session this week, just because I'm working with folks on some business plans as we speak. And this is a great opportunity for me to kind of learn, maybe get some thoughts and processes. And there's folks that I'm working with business plans on are on the call too. So it might be an opportunity to ask a few questions. But with that said, Julie, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Brent. And thank you guys for coming. I know I say it every single week, but every minute you invest in your business and learning more you'll see so much value in it. So just before we get started, really quick, I just want to show you the remaining schedule. So it's hard to believe, but this is week 5 of 8. So we're kind of over the hump of the lessons. And so today we're going to be talking about business plans. Next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about blogs. There are a lot of different reasons why we blog. Some of it has to do with being a thought leader. Some of it has to do with SEO. There's a lot of different reasons to blog. So that's a term that was kind of popular in the early 2000s, or maybe, and then it kind of went away for a while, and now is really coming back strong. So we're going to talk about that next week. We're also on the 17th going to talk about social media planning. And then on the 24th, we're going to talk about goals and how goal setting can really affect the growth of your business, the pace that you grow. There's a lot of great things with goals. And so I hope that that's a great way to kind of wrap up this series, and we can take everything that we've learned and put them into action. So just know you're always welcome. If you miss one or two, that's okay. You don't need to just come to what you can and absorb what you can. So the next thing I'm going to share is today, as we talk about business plans, there are so many resources and additional information about business plans on the Initiate website. So if you haven't been a part of this website, you really need to check it out. All you do is you go to native360.org, you click on small business tools, and you log into Initiate. And throughout this program, there are so many tools for you. Today, we're going to be going through a lot of them, but there's examples about business plans. There's text examples, so you can really take those examples and fill in your name. There's calculators on there to help you figure out some of the numbers we're going to be talking about. And this Initiate is a completely free tool offered through Native 360. It's just one of the many tools that they offer. And so I would encourage you to go to native360.org, click on small business tools, log in or register for Initiate. It only takes about 2 minutes to register. And then you have full access to these tools. And these are the tools that some people are paying hundreds of dollars a month for, thousands of dollars for, and you get them free through Native 360. So please take advantage of all of those tools. So today we're going to be working through a set of session notes that were formulated pretty much directly from the Initiate site, and then with just some real world examples and experiences in there. Please feel free, if you have questions, if you'd like more examples, if something's not clicking, please feel free to unmute yourself. You can also always add it in the chat box, and we can come to it and talk about it more. I'll try to leave about 10 minutes at the end if there's any more specific examples or something that wasn't covered that you'd like me to cover. So let's go ahead and dive on in. I guess before we start, are there any questions from last week? Anything that happened over the week that was a big aha moment for the better of the group? Anything exciting news? All right.
I don't say excited, but I had a couple other competitor landscape companies report my Facebook page and have me blocked for 30 days.
Oh no.
So I can't advertise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an obstacle. Maybe just thinking of other ways through email marketing, through even the good old postcard. Direct mail is something that we're seeing a very high return on investment for. So just always keep in mind that you can always print a flyer. You can always make a postcard. Those are things that are less likely to be filtered or blocked or controlled. So we always remember that if you start getting frustrated online, go back to good old handwritten notes or make a flyer and hang it up in a gas station. Those kind of marketing tactics are old school, but they still work today and they're actually gaining a lot of traction. I'm sorry to hear about that. Richard. We get your talk at the end if there's other ideas or other things you want to talk through.
All right.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and hold on just a second. All right, so today we're going to talk about business plan. And really the title of this lesson was Making Your Dreams a Reality, which can sound a little corny, but really that's what a business plan does. I'm a big picture person. I have a lot of ideas. I often wake up with ideas. I go to bed with ideas. I'm one of those weird people that's up before 5 a.m. almost every day with a notebook because I'm a big idea person. And ideas are great and dreams are great and all of that are exciting things. But if you don't put it on paper and formulate some kind of plan, then it really never moves past that point of a dream or an idea. So today, the reason I really get excited about business plans, I am not typically I'm a big picture person, but I'm not typically a detail person. And a business plan is kind of detailed. But the reason I get really excited about them and the reason they're so important is because a business plan takes your big idea and it shows how it's actually going to get put into place. And once you can have that business plan, then you're not just sharing some crazy idea that you have, but you're actually sharing your idea with a plan in place. So just like anything, if I said, I want to run the Lincoln Marathon in May, that's kind of a crazy idea. And I'm not a runner, so that's an even crazier idea. But if I said, on May 15th, I'm going to run a marathon, people would say, oh, that's great. And then maybe the next question would be, do you run a lot? And if I say, no, I don't really run. The next question might be, so do you have a plan for training? Right? That's going to be the next thing, because to say this crazy idea and have a goal, that's one thing. But if you don't have an actual tangible plan, so for running a marathon, my plan might be how many days a week I'm going to run, how far I'm going to run each time, maybe what my time goals are going to be. Maybe nutrition is going to be a part of it, or a training partner is going to be a part of it. I might need to buy new shoes. I might need to actually register for the marathon. Those are all part of a plan to make my idea happen. When we go to the grocery store, we go with this idea that we need food, right? Everyone does that probably on a weekly or at least a monthly basis. You go with this idea that you need food, but if you make a list, are you typically more productive at the grocery store, right? You leave with things that can actually get put together to make a meal. And that's just because you had a plan going in. If I go to the grocery store without a list, I often come back with a lot of great things. And then I go to cook supper and nothing really goes together. And so sometimes when we talk business plans, you think, well, I've never done that. I don't know how to do it. But just think about the times in your life that you have made a plan, whether it's been to buy a house or to go grocery shopping or to accomplish a race or maybe a fitness goal. So just think of it as a business plan is just one type of plan, but it's not any harder than other types of plans you've done. If you've put together a wedding or a graduation party or an event, that is probably a bigger deal or a bigger, more planning than it is to put together a business plan. So if you've done any of those things, this will be a piece of cake. So today we're going to really talk through this process and the steps. And like I said, on Initiate 360, there are so many more resources for you. All right, so let's start with number one. What is a business plan? A business plan is a document that outlines a purpose, strategy, financial profile, and future revenue projections of a business. It is used for internal growth purposes as well as to present to future potential funders. So oftentimes I get asked, do I need a business plan if I'm not getting a loan? Oftentimes we hear about you need to take your business plan to the bank, or you need to take your business plan to a micro lender like a Native 360. So oftentimes people say, well, if I'm not getting a loan, do I really need a business plan? And the answer is yes. Just like if you're not preparing a big meal for guests, you're just cooking for yourself, a grocery list is still helpful. So even if it's just used internally for yourself and for your employees and for your business partners, a business plan is still important. But let's say that there's an opportunity that arises. Let's say you have your business plan, you made it this week after we talked today, even if you just made it for you, then let's say an opportunity arises. Maybe a grant is available or some funding's available, or there's a growth opportunity and they say, hey, can we take a look at your business plan? It's nice to have that done. Even if you might need to update a few things, it's kind of like a resume. If you have to start from scratch, it can be a little bit overwhelming. But if you already have it in place, let's say 6 months from now, opportunity comes up, all you have to do is maybe update a few things and it's ready to go. So I always recommend let's all make a goal to work on a business plan this week. And then you have it, even if it's not perfectly finished or finalized. But then whenever you need it, you're not having to scramble. So number one, we kind of learned a little bit about what a business plan is and why everyone needs one, even if it's for internal. Number two, why is a business plan important? A business plan can create 30% greater chance of growth and a greater chance to double the business. The plan can help you map out the rational way to grow, understand what it takes to fund that growth, provide a solid basis for potential investors or lenders to be interested in supporting the increase of your business. So anytime you make a plan and you put it on paper, you're going to be more successful. We're going to talk about that a lot more on the last week, week 8, when we talk about goals. But goals and plans kind of go hand in hand. If you actually take the time to make them and to write them down, you're more likely to accomplish them. We're number 3. So the first steps, again, oftentimes when we talk about business plan, people say, I don't even know where to start. So this is where you should start. And this is very simple. This can be done on the back of an envelope or a Post-it note or a scratch of paper. So every business has a story and every story has a beginning. So before you jump into any business plan template, give yourself a head start by writing down your story. You won't use every word in the plan, but lenders and investors want to know that you're real and that you're in it for the long haul. By writing your story, it means that you're in control of the story. So if somebody asks you, how did you get started? You have that story in your head. Maybe this was a family business that you grew up watching your parents run. Maybe you saw a gap in the market and you knew that you could solve that problem. Maybe you had an idea and it's something that you worked on. Maybe you bought a business because the right opportunity presented itself, but you have a story. And so the first thing is just writing that down. Oftentimes I do this process when I'm driving. If I live in Grand Island and maybe I have to drive to Lincoln for a meeting, it's an hour and a half, I will just talk my story out loud, even if it's just for myself, just because it kind of reminds you of practicing that story. Why did I get started? Why do I do what I do? And just kind of rehearsing that, because sometimes you forget those little pieces. A part of my story is I started out as a photographer in 2003. I started my company right out of high school, and I always had a love for photography. But one story that I often forget about is when I was about 7 years old, I was on a family vacation to Colorado. I have a younger sister who was 5, and my mom bought us all these little plastic cameras with film in them from the dollar store for our trip. They were probably a $5 plastic camera, and we each got one roll of film. And as we were climbing this, I called it a mountain. It was probably this little bank of rocks. My mom was holding onto my camera so I could climb better. My little sister started to slip down the rocks, and my mom dropped my camera to grab my sister. And I was mad for the rest of our vacation because my film, the camera tumbled down the mountain, crashed open, my film was exposed, and I never got to see my vacation photos that I'd worked all week on capturing. And my mom kept reminding me, but you still have a little sister. And I kept saying, but those pictures are irreplaceable. So that's part of my story as a photographer that I often forget about, but it reminds me that I loved capturing images even at 7 years old, maybe more than I even loved my little sister who was 5, which is not true. But it is part of my story and my passion for photography. So that's a silly example, but those are some of those stories that we often forget and may not make it into a business plan, but it may remind me that this passion I have runs deep, deeper than just wanting to make a dollar, or deeper than a business, but it's actually something that was part of me even as a child, kind of looking at the world a different way. So that's a long example, but it kind of tells you that this story does not need to be for anyone but yourself. So some of the questions you could write are, what sparked the idea for your business? What were you doing when you got the idea? How long have you been working on it? What are some of your successes so far? What do you hope to achieve? What's unique about what you can bring? So these are just some of those topics. The nice thing with our phones and the technology that we have is, have you ever used that text to text feature? So you can always open up a text message or a notepad, and you can even put on that little icon that looks like a microphone and just talk. It might not record it perfectly, but it might get the gist of your idea going. And so then it would automatically type it out for you. A lot of our computers have the same type of microphones built in and the same type of features. So either if you're a journaler, start journaling, start talking it out loud, have these discussions. If you have a spouse or a business partner, kind of talk about those stories, and that might inspire you to the beginning of your business plan. The next step of creating your business plan is there are 6 main sections that you should focus on when developing a plan. So I like to think of these as 6 pages. So your business plan doesn't have to be 6 pages, but it could be. And this could literally be your table of contents. So your first page could be your summary, page 2, your market, your competition, page 4, your operations, your financial information, and then your community. So if you want to create a very simple business plan, think of it as a 6-page paper like you would write for school. And think of it as these 6 could be your table of contents. Now, as you look up templates for business plans, and Initiate has templates, there are a lot more you can add in there. Some business plans are as many as 40 or 50 pages, but this 6 sections would give you a very solid business plan. That would be a great start, and especially if it's internally. A financial, let's say that you do use a lender, they will tell you if they need more. But even if you create a 6-page business plan with this 6 pages, this is going to be far above what most businesses have. So just think of it that way. So we're going to go through these together. So business plan model summary, it would be much easier to create now that you know the beginning, middle, and end of your story and what a success looks like down the road. So the first thing is you're going to start with your summary. One of the key pieces in the future will be your elevator speech. Put together a few sentences that tell in a plain language what is unique about your business and your business model. These short statements will also make up the majority of your executive summary written in a document. While you can expand on your elevator speech somewhat, in the summary plan, it should be kept short. So in branding and marketing, we talk a lot about your elevator speech. And the best way I can explain this is, let's say you're at a family reunion and you run into a cousin that you haven't seen in 10 years, and they say, "What are you doing these days?" Whatever you say next is your elevator speech. Now, you may have never thought of it that way, but really that's what it is. And so if somebody says, "What do you do for a living?" Whatever your response is your elevator speech. Now, for a summary, you might want to refine it a little bit, but really it's just the who, what, where, It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be your formal mission statement or vision statement. It's really just who you are, what you're doing. And the goal of an elevator speech or a summary is that the goal is that you're just telling enough that they want to learn more, or maybe it intrigues a question. So if someone said, Julie, what do you do at Tally? And I said, we're actually a full service marketing agency. We help fill the gaps for companies who are large enough that they need marketing, but are small enough that they don't have an internal marketing department. So that could be my elevator speech. That could also be, with a little refining, my summary. And hopefully that sparks a question. Maybe something like, what are a couple companies that you've worked for? Or what size businesses do you work with? Those might be a couple of those next questions that in your elevator speech or in a conversation with your cousin would lead to a conversation. And in your business plan would intrigue the reader to read more. So you don't want to put everything in your summary, because if I explain everything in my summary, there's no need to read the next 5 pages. So just think of it. It's a summary. What do you do? Who, what, where, when, why? And that's what that first step is. The next part we're going to talk about is marketing your business. So marketing goes far beyond the bounds of simply figuring out what you're selling and who you're selling to, although both are very important. You need to know who your typical customer is and what they really need from you. So we talk a lot about target market in this part of your business plan. So who are you selling a product to? You may want to talk about their gender, their age, location, income level, education level, marital status, occupation. And then what can you use right now to attract those customers? So how are we going to get to them? Are we going to use social media, online ads, newspapers? So let's for example, say that I'm selling a lawn chair that is super comfortable and it has a battery pack to warm your buns while you're sitting. Okay, that's an odd product I just made up right now, but it's actually a good idea. But maybe I'm selling this to soccer moms that have to sit out at soccer games for hours and hours in the spring and fall and are always cold. So that is a very specific target market. So I might talk a little bit about what age they are, about what income level they are, maybe why I'm selling to moms versus dads, because there are soccer dads, but they're usually standing pacing the fields. They also don't get as cold, and they're usually not the ones spending as much money. So that would be a simple example where I would want to go very specifically. Obviously, everyone uses chairs. That's kind of a non-given, but I can't just say I'm going to market my chair to everyone. I'm going to want to be very specific about the target market. Who is exactly my client? And often a good way to think about your target market is who's your ideal client. So who do you want to attract? Well, you might attract some people that cause you a lot of pain and suffering and take up a lot of your time. They're not your target market. They may be your customers, but ideally think about who do you like working for? Who do you like working with? Who do you like selling to? Is it a certain age group? Is it a certain demographic? Maybe it's a certain education level. So think of it that way. Do I have any questions about target market or about anything that we've covered so far before we keep going? All right. Feel free to jump in or put something in the comments if you have any questions. Sometimes when we talk about target market, we even give these people names. This is more internally, but we might even say, Sally soccer mom, maybe another target market's going to be something else. We might give them a name. So that's a way that we really get specific on our target market. The next step is competition awareness and planning. So be realistic about your business plan. There are always competitors, but the key is to be aware and to be able to plan and deal with the competition. So that's something that we hear a lot sometimes when we say, who are your competitors? And people will say, oh, I don't have any competitors. That's not always the case unless you come up with something that's completely unique. But nowadays, especially with online sales, you always have a competitor. You might not have a local competitor. You might not have someone within a 30-mile radius, but odds are you still have a competitor. Now, someone might have to travel, so that gives you a little competitive advantage that you're local, or someone might have to pay for shipping, so it gives you the competitive advantage that you can deliver, or people can pick up in your store. But you always have a competitor. And so I think just realizing that that's a real thing, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Having a competitor does not necessarily mean that they're taking your market share away. And so as you go through that business plan, being very upfront about who your competitors are, and it's okay for your competitors to be doing something right. It's okay to say a good thing about a competitor, but you just want to say how you're different. So maybe my competitor has years of experience, but I have a fresh new approach. So while having years of experience can be a good thing, I can also say why I'm different than my competitor and why that sets us apart. And so you don't have to hate all of your competitors. I really believe in collaboration over competition. You can partner with them or finding ways that you do things differently. But in your business plan, you're going to want to say who your competitors are, be really upfront with that, what they do good, maybe what they don't do as good, and how you differ. No one's going to believe a business plan when you say, I have zero competition in the whole world. That's just rarely the case. Because if it's a good idea, someone else is probably doing it too. So, some questions to answer about your competition. Who else is selling what you plan to sell or your service? How competitive are they? How competitive is your pricing in the market? It doesn't necessarily mean that your product is cheaper, but that it's priced appropriately. How does your product beat the competition? Service of sale, reliability. Again, if this is a service-based company, maybe talking about your customer service or your experience, how you do things differently. But just remember that admitting that you have competition and admitting to what your competition does well does not hurt your business plan. It actually strengthens it. Let's talk about your operations plan. Operations include your organizational structure and the human side of your operations, where you do business, the process and the systems you'll be using, and the tools or equipment you need to do business. So the operation concept to have established is so number one would be your operational type. What form of organization does your business operate under? Are you a sole proprietor? Are you a partnership? Are you an LLC? Are you what kind of form does it operate under? Are you a nonprofit? Do you have a 501c3 status? Because that's an important piece to know. The management, include the current jobs in your company and what they do. The future operations should also be outlined. So it might say, I am this position. This is what I do now. As our company grows, these are the other tasks that I will take on. At this point, we will hire an assistant manager. That is a good thing to outline. Also in your management, what's your experience? Why are you qualified in that position? So if you have 25 years of expertise, talk about that and talk about the previous jobs you've had that makes you qualified to have that position. Under operations, you're going to want to mention your location and facilities. Where's your physical location? Will the space meet the current and future needs? Will your operations be online as well? Technology, what software, hardware, other information technology do you use to operate your business? So if you have a online calendar, if you have a booking system, if you have a project manager software that you use, how does that integrate in your business? And equipment and tools. What tools do you have? What equipment do you have? Why is it good equipment? And then what equipment will you need, or is there any specialty equipment you will need down the road to do your work? So if you think about these pieces, you could think of them as each of them being their own paragraph. That's a very simple way to think of operations. So you're going to write one paragraph for operational type, one paragraph for management, one paragraph for location and facilities. So again, rather than getting overwhelmed or trying to figure out how these all go together, create 5 paragraphs, and that could cover this page of your business plan. Are there any questions over how those operations work? Now, one thing I think that's important to keep in mind is this is a plan. So this doesn't have to, sometimes plans don't work out. If I make a grocery list to go to the store, that's my plan. If I get to the grocery store and they're out of 3 of the 5 things that I needed, I adapt my plan, right? I might go with a different brand, or I might throw it out and come up with a different meal altogether. So just remember that your business plan is a plan. It's what you think is going to happen, or what your plan is. But know that the reason that we update business plans is because plans change. So you don't have to have your operations figured out 100% before you make your plan. Because you know that if things change, as things change, that's an easy piece to update. Richard, did you have a question?
No, I was just fixing my settings.
Okay, no problem. All right. And Pete, I know for Nave 360, he talks a lot about your team, and this would be a great place to talk about other pieces, maybe you're not an expert in something, but you have someone on your team who is. I know in our business, my husband, he's my business partner in Tally, and he has a graphic design and web design degree. And so when we talk about those parts of our business, while I know them, I'm not an expert. So that's why I often talk up his expertise. He's got a degree in graphic design. He's a GoDaddy authorized IT. I don't even know what his title is, but that's when I can really talk up his strengths without trying to say that I know all of that. And as long as that's outlined in my business plan, then it's clear and it's on the table for everyone to see. All right, moving right along. Let's get into our financials a little bit. So this is a part that there are a lot of tools on the Initiate to figure these financials out if you haven't already. But again, just keep in mind that your business plan is an overview. It's that first step. So oftentimes you can put in the overview of your financials into your business plan. And if people need more, they'll ask for more. So if they want to see, more updated statements, if they want to dig into your financials additionally, they always can. But you do want to have financials as a part of your business plan because financials are a part of your business. So the part of your business plan that contains your financials is going to be absolutely key in obtaining lending. And transparency here is paramount. So you really want to put everything on the table. The key questions that will be asked, having them ready in your business plan to make them easier to answer. What's your break even and what's your break even point and a project date to reach it? What does your cash flow look like? What are your operating costs? And what are your owner's needs? Now, when it comes to your salary and your operating cost, these are things, again, that we want to be upfront for. Sometimes we think that in our business plan, it looks stronger if we say, oh, we don't need any money to run our business, and I don't need to take a salary. I can just, I'm just doing this on nights and weekends. And while we think that sounds good in a business plan, that actually can make a lender, first of all, that doesn't sound realistic, because let's say that your business is going to take more than nights and weekends. Second, they understand that we have our own bills, even if it's groceries and rent. And so by taking a reasonable salary, or at least having a plan of when you're going to take a reasonable salary, shows that you have thought that through. Another piece of that is operating expenses. And oftentimes this can be done in phases of, to get started, this is what I'm going to need. As I grow, I'm going to need this additional equipment. And then as we're successful, we're going to maybe upgrade to these other pieces that are going to make the job even more efficient. So again, looking at that as what do I need now or what do I have now? Maybe what's the next step? And then ideally when we hit a home run with this business, what's that going to look like? Again, remembering that this is just a plan. It's not set in stone. So again, don't let those financials overwhelm you. These could each be their own paragraph or chart in your business plan, but it's really just an overview and saying that I've thought these things through. This is my plan, but I've taken the time to think through financials. Financials are often a thing that we think, oh, if we just don't think about it, it doesn't happen. But in a business, financials are a part of your business. So they need to be a part of the conversation in your business plan. This last piece is often overlooked, but I feel like is very important, especially if you're talking any kind of financing, but any kind of person that really cares about the community, if they are invested in what you're doing. When we talk about grants, oftentimes if you're applying for a grant, they want to know, how is this going to impact more than just you? And even if you're a sole proprietor in business for yourself, your business affects more than just you, right? No one is in business in their own bubble. So your business is going to affect either positively or negatively, hopefully positively, the people that you're selling to. It's going to impact the people you employ. It's going to impact your community in some way. And so these are all parts of community impact that is important, because this shows that it's not just about you, and it rarely ever is. And most people who get into business have a bigger vision in mind. When you go back to your story, maybe to inspire your kids, or maybe to show the community that this is possible. If you go back to your story, that community impact piece is probably in there. It's just maybe buried a little bit. So let's go through how we're going to uncover that community impact. So community and other impact. For your sake and that of potential supporter, including your impact on the community has become more and more important. I've done a whole hour, 2-hour speaks just about how impact matters. People want to know that you care about the community. They want to know that you care about others. They want to know that you're giving back. So it used to be that nonprofits were kind of responsible for doing good and businesses were responsible for making money. Now, more than ever, those two things are blended. So even if you're a for-profit business, people care what you're doing to give back, even if it's supporting a local baseball team for $100 a year. They want to know that you care, that you're rooted in the community, and that you're giving back. So here are a few things that you could include in this section. How many people will you be employing? Your general benefits offered. So maybe you're giving some vacation pay. Maybe you're giving flexible schedule to those employees. Maybe you are offering some kind of health benefits or 401k. But even benefits of flexibility for offering a job that's flexible so that those kids can, or those employees can pick up their kids from school. That's a huge benefit to the community. Opportunities for employees to learn and grow, commitment to diversity, and a company's carbon offset or other ways to diminish your environmental impact. So maybe you're doing things that are going to help your community by recycling or reusing. Maybe you have items that you don't use. Maybe you're building a house and at the end of the build, you have paint left over. So you donate that to your local restore or your local a nonprofit that builds houses for the underprivileged. There are ways that we give back that we don't realize. Maybe you serve food, and if there's some kind of crisis in your community, a tornado or a flood or something like that, maybe you have the resources that you can donate food for workers in those times of need. I know when the floods hit a couple years ago, right around Grand Island, that was a huge community resource. Businesses that were willing to say, you know, these people are working around the clock. I can donate pulled pork sandwiches. that's a way to give back to your community that we may not think of that has an impact. Again, going back to busing or to driving students to school, I live in Grand Island and we don't have a public school bus system. There's no busing system to get kids to school in the Grand Island Public Schools. Very few children get bused. And so being flexible with our employees that they can drive their kids to school and pick up their kids from school, not only does that make that employee's life better and their kids' life better, it helps our community, because otherwise not having buses is a real issue that affects if people and when people can work. And so, yes, it's a benefit to the employee, but it's also a benefit to our community because it helps alleviate some of that strain of kids that maybe need busing a little bit more. So that's one way on that community that I really wanted to touch on and I think is important. Are there any ways or anything that we've talked about through that community piece, through the operations, the financial piece? Are there any of those pieces that we want to talk on a little bit more, or that you'd like to either give an example yourself on or ask for an additional example on? All right. If there's not, I want to dive in just a little bit more into the action steps. So now we've kind of learned about what to do. How do we put this into action? How do I actually do this week? Let's set a goal. Okay. So let's go back to the beginning. When we talked about those paragraphs. So step one, let's go ahead and do this in steps. So we are going to spend some time talking through or walking through or journaling what the story of our business, why we started, why we decided however many years ago, whether it was this year or 20 years ago, why I thought this crazy idea was good, right? At some point when we weren't so tired and maybe weren't so spread thin, we were really excited about this business. Hopefully we still are. But let's talk through that and write that down. So that's our first step. Really spend some time maybe pulling out old photos or talking to people that maybe someone that used to work for you still is a part of your life. We hired an intern at Tally. We've been up for now about 3.5 years. So our first summer we hired an intern. And we didn't know what we were doing with the intern program. Every summer our intern program has developed, but we didn't know what we were doing. So we this kid said he liked graphic design and websites. We let him come hang out in the office. He was right between his senior year of high school and his freshman year of college. And he just hung out with us for a summer in the office. And he did little tasks here and there, designed little things. We didn't have a formal program. We didn't have anything set up in place. We didn't even pay him. We didn't have any kind of anything set. So we kept thinking, I kept thinking, man, I don't know if he got anything out of this summer. I don't know anything from this. But now when we reflect on our story, Jacob was a part of that story. And I just want to share a message that I got from him a couple days ago. We're going to be doing some photos in Lincoln. And he said, I just checked my email today to find out that Tally is taking team photos for Lincoln Eagles. I miss the heck out of working with you all and have been blown away by your growth as a team over the last few years. I think about you guys quite often and all the memories we made. So it was just a fun reflection on our story that, wow, he really did enjoy working from here. He still thinks of us. He's cheering us on from afar. He lives in Lincoln now. But he's a part of our story that we often forget about, and not in a bad way, but so much has happened since then. So step one, take some time to think about those people in your life, those first employees, maybe that grand opening day when you were doing things up until the wire. Maybe that truck didn't come in, so you had to drive somewhere to get your stuff. Start thinking through that story. And then the next part, think of these as 6 individual assignments. So first of all, just write your summary. That should be pretty simple. Now, I would encourage you, if you have other people in your business besides yourself, do these assignments maybe individually. Each of you write a summary and then come together, and the final summary will probably be somewhere in the middle. And so, summary, what do you do if somebody just says, "Hey, what do you guys do there?" What would you say? A summary could be anywhere from one good paragraph to maybe 3 paragraphs long, maybe a who, what, where, when, why. Think of it that way. But create that summary of what do you do. The second thing, talk about your market, talk about your target market. Who do you sell to? Who do you ideally sell to? Think of it that way. And then who do you want to sell to in the future? What does that person look like? How do they spend their money? What's their target age? What time of day do they shop? Number 3, write a page about the competition. So again, if you kind of think maybe about 3 paragraphs per section, write 3 paragraphs about your competition. Who are they? What do they do well? What do they do not so well? And how are you different than them? So if you don't have competition locally, let's say that your nearest competition is 35 miles away, talk about what they do well, but then also talk about how 35 miles is a long way to travel, especially, in this day and age with the price of gas, and people really want somewhere that they can just swing in on their way to work. That's a huge part of that. So don't just say my competition's 35 miles away, but talk about why it's important to have someone close. All right, so after competition, we're going to talk about our operations. So this really gets down to who is doing it day to day and how they're doing it. The who and the how is really where the operation comes into. And then who do you hope to join your team someday if your plan goes as you hope it does? Sometimes people will request some as part of the operations. Some lenders might ask for a resume from each person as if you were applying for a job. I know there's been grants where each of the owners have had to submit a resume, which was simply just, what was your school background? What was your previous employer? What special skills do you have? So if you don't have an updated resume, that might be something to work on. Because sometimes as part of your operations, they'll ask for that resume as well. So that's just kind of your operations is going to be why you're qualified now, but they may want to see a resume, and that might be kind of your past experiences, your jobs. I mean, resumes even go back to like what clubs you're active in, maybe what boards you're on, things like that. So if you don't have an active or a current resume, it's never a bad idea to have one, just in case you ever get asked for one. And then financial information. So this is that time to just do those snapshots. I know a couple of weeks ago when we talked about accounting, we talked about those snapshots of what is your profit loss? What's your projected sales? What is, when we talk through some of those terms as far as what is your profit margin? Why is this going to make sense? Another part of this financial information may be what percentage of your revenue is going to come from different revenue streams. So let's say that I sell 3 things. They're probably not going to be 33% this, 33% this, 33% this. So it might be we're predicting to make 50% of our sales off this one thing. We're probably going to make 30% off this and 10% off this. And so breaking down the percentage of your revenue from your different revenue streams. And then it might be, once these 3 things get up and going, we'd love to add this additional thing, which we predict is going to bring in this much additional revenue. So that's just kind of adding icing to the cake. So you need to prove how your financials are working now, and then what your goals are going to be and how that's going to change. Now, if you see a flux in the market, like let's say that the price of something is going to go up, or we feel like this is you can go into that slightly, but you don't need to go into it in a lot of depth. It's just making sure that whoever is reading this knows that you're aware of it. So, as fuel prices continue to increase, our plan is this. You don't need to go into the exact market of how that's going to work, but at least letting everyone know that you understand that that's an issue and you're preparing for it. The last piece on that community, again, I can't stress that enough, how you're giving back, what your plans are, what are you passionate about? And it doesn't necessarily have to be connected to what you do. One of our clients is a cleaning company. They go in and they clean homes for people, and they are passionate about giving back to survivors of breast cancer and women battling breast cancer. And so they go in, and anyone who's battling breast cancer, they'll go in and deep clean their house for them as they're going through chemo. And so that is a huge service that they offer to the community. Now, breast cancer and house cleaning you wouldn't necessarily put them in the same bucket, but it's a need that as you're going through chemo, you may not have energy to deep clean your house. And so by them being passionate about that cause, it connects it together, and everyone can get on board of, wow, that's really great. They do that. And most people have some kind of connection on someone that they know that's been personally affected, that they might want to connect to that business. And so just thinking that through, you don't have to be a T-ball company to support a T-ball team. Maybe you care about the youth of the community, so you're going to support a T-ball team. So just think of that too, that it has to come from what you're passionate about, but it doesn't necessarily have to go hand in hand with what you do day in and day out. All right. Well, we are just wrapping up for today. We have about 5 minutes left. Next week, we're going to be talking about blogs. So a lot of these topics are going to tie in. But before we end up, Brent, I know you mentioned that you are working with others on business plans, and I'm sure you created some business plans for yourself. Are there any pieces you'd like to touch on or go over?
Absolutely. I think you covered high level the topics that need to be in a business plan. Obviously, there's more to that. And also, guys, don't be afraid to go out on the web and look at other business plans. There's hundreds of thousands of business plans out there. But the one thing I will say, and I think Julie hit on it, make sure you tell a story. Make sure you give the reader, which is either the bank or somebody else, a little bit about yourself, right? There has to be some emotion in a business plan. A lot of the business plans out there today are really dry, and they don't say anything about who you are and where you're trying to be. So make sure that's part of it. And the financial part is probably the other part. The thing that a lot of banks are going to look quickly at, they're going to flip through those pages, they're going to read it, but they're going to look at the financials. And when they look at the financials, the one thing they're looking for that they won't tell you is that loan payment in there? Is that loan repayment back in your financials? If you don't put that in there, the odds of getting a meeting with that bank are slight to none. You need to know that you have to pay them back in a timely manner and at a rate and an amount they expect, right? If a bank would think, if you're a new customer and first time getting a loan, you can't get a 10-year loan on a business. It might be 3 to 5 years. They're going to expect a quicker payoff than somebody has established credit. So those are a couple key things that have to happen in your business plan. And the one thing I'll say is working with Pete and his team at Native 360, that's a service they provide, right? If you would like to be a customer because of an actual client, they will help you get that business plan wrote. And writing a business plan isn't always also starting when you start your business. Sometimes a business plan comes in later when you're trying to grow, right? When you want to increase the revenues, when you want to increase the amount of employees you have. Sometimes you don't scrap your business plan you have, but maybe you modify it. But it's really something that if you're seriously going into business, you better do a little more research and get active in it, because the business plan is the foundation of where you want to be 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
Yeah, that's all great insight, Brent. Thank you so much. And that's a great point. And kind of think of your audience, because the bank is going to automatically flip to the financials, where if you're going for maybe nonprofit, they may go right to the community. If you're going through a program about hiring, they might look right at operations. So really make sure that the audience that you're going for, You may want to beef that part up more or add to it or be more specific, but having that basic template then, or having at least that foundation made, is going to make you just, if you have to add a section or maybe increase a couple pages that they ask for, you already have the foundation laid. And Brent made a good point. As soon as you have your foundation, have someone review it, whether it is someone from Native 360, they have a great resource to review those. Even if it's having a spouse look it over or a friend, because they may pick out some of those holes that you have missed, or say some of that information's in our head. So they might say, hey, this all makes sense, but you don't really say when you're going to open, or you don't really say, you never did say where your building is. Some of those pieces is in our head. So yeah, once you have that template, don't be afraid to have someone review it, ask them for their honest feedback. Ask them, and take that feedback as growth. Don't get defensive with it, but just really know that everyone's in this to help you succeed, and that's why we're all here today, and we're all cheering for you. So, all right, I'm happy to stick on if there's any last minute questions, but otherwise we will see you next Wednesday at 9:00 again, and we're just here for any questions that you have. So we'll see you next week.